Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. I never thought a simple dinner party could shake the foundation of my comfortable life. 57. I had settled into a peaceful routine. Retirement days spent tending to my garden, afternoons lost in historical novels, and quiet evenings with my husband, Mark. We had been married for over 30 years, and I assumed our days of surprises were long behind us. How wrong I was. It all started as an ordinary Friday night dinner hosted by Mark's longtime colleague, Jeff, and his wife, Allison. Jeff, at 48, was younger than us, charming, confident, and effortlessly charismatic. His silver hair and self-assured presence made him someone you couldn't help but notice. We had known Jeff and Allison casually for a few years, mostly through work events. Allison was a gracious host, elegant and warm, with a talent for making even the simplest gatherings feel special. Their home, a beautiful suburban colonial, was picture-perfect with its neatly trimmed hedges and inviting front porch. As we stepped inside, soft jazz played in the background, blending seamlessly with the mouth-watering aroma of roasting garlic and fresh herbs drifting from the kitchen. The dining table was set beautifully, candles flickering and casting gentle shadows along the pale blue and beige walls. Cozy atmosphere immediately put me at ease. "Melanie! So glad you could make it," Allison greeted me warmly, her voice as soothing as the jazz filling the room. She pulled me in for a hug, her kindness instantly melting away any lingering nerves. "Thanks, Allison," I said with a broad smile. "It smells absolutely wonderful in here." We settled around the table and Jeff poured the wine, effortlessly steering the conversation with his deep, engaging voice. He shared amusing stories from his recent travels, making us laugh and keeping the mood light. Mark was relaxed, clearly enjoying the break from his stressful job. When dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate mousse topped with fresh raspberries, Jeff turned to me with a curious look. "Melanie, Mark tells me you have quite the green thumb. I could really use some advice. My roses are struggling." I laughed, feeling a bit flattered. "Oh, I wouldn't say I'm talented, Jeff. Just patient. But I'd be happy to take a look." "Great," he said smoothly, his gaze holding mine for just a second longer than expected. "Maybe after dinner?" A warmth crept up my neck, but I quickly brushed it off, convinced I was imagining things. After dessert, Jeff led me through a sliding door onto a spacious patio, bathed in soft moonlight. Cool evening breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from Allison's garden. Inside, Mark and Allison were still deep in conversation about vacation plans. Jeff guided me toward a row of roses struggling under delicate strings of outdoor lights. He knelt down, inspecting the leaves, and gestured for me to join him. "See how the edges are turning yellow?" he asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with curiosity. I leaned in, suddenly aware of how close we were. My heartbeat quickened for reasons I couldn't quite explain. "They might need more nitrogen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jeff turned to me, his expression serious yet gentle. "You know, Melanie, I admire what you and Mark have. 20 years of marriage. Allison and I, we seem to have drifted apart." His honesty caught me off guard. "Every marriage has ups and downs, Jeff. It's normal." He nodded, thoughtful. "Maybe. But lately I feel like something's missing." There was a vulnerability in his eyes that struck a chord deep within me. Before I could respond, his hand lightly brushed against mine. The brief, innocent touch sent a surge of emotion through me, a mix of guilt and unexpected excitement. "I'm sorry," Jeff said quickly, pulling back. His voice was full of genuine embarrassment. "I didn't mean to cross a line." I hesitated, my emotions swirling. My instinct was to step away, to retreat to the safety of what I knew. But something deeper urged me to respond with kindness. "It's okay," I said softly, surprising even myself. "You're just being honest." Jeff looked up, his features softening with gratitude. For a moment, we simply existed in the quiet, acknowledging the tension between us. It was subtle but undeniable. And for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. Returning inside felt surreal. Mark's familiar smile was comforting, yet it carried a weight I couldn't quite place. Across the room, Jeff had withdrawn into himself, keeping a polite distance. The evening wrapped up amicably, but my mind remained tangled in the delicate complexity of what had just happened. Later that night, as Mark slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my heart restless with questions. Was my reaction just flattery from unexpected attention? Or had Jeff awakened something in me, something long buried? Could a single moment of connection truly shake the foundation of the life I'd cherished for decades? I realized, with both discomfort and curiosity, that our predictable, comfortable life now felt incomplete. And beneath the confusion, something within me stirred, like a fragile bud reaching for the first light of dawn. I didn't fully understand it yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This night was just the beginning. A journey of self-discovery had been set in motion, one shaped by quiet moments, lingering glances, and an unspoken connection Jeff and I now shared. What lay ahead would challenge every boundary we had carefully built, forcing us both to face truths we had long ignored. In the days after that unforgettable dinner, my daily life seemed unchanged. I still took my morning walks in the garden, enjoyed my afternoon tea with a book, and spent evenings watching old movies with Mark. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. A quiet restlessness had taken hold of me. I kept replaying that moment on the patio, Jeff's hand brushing against mine and his unexpected confession. Every time I thought about it, emotions I hadn't felt in years resurfaced. It had been so long since I had felt truly seen or desired, even if just for a fleeting moment. But along with the rush of those feelings came guilt. Mark was my husband, my lifelong partner, and I loved him deeply. Yet something about Jeff, his honesty, his vulnerability, had reached a part of my heart I hadn't realized was neglected. One sunny afternoon, I stood beside my prized lilacs, carefully pruning the wilted blossoms. The garden had always been my place of peace, where my thoughts felt clear. But today, my mind was anything but settled. "Melanie, you have a visitor." Mark's voice called from the back porch, jolting me from my thoughts. Turning, my heart leaped into my throat. Jeff stood next to Mark, dressed casually in a blue button-down shirt and jeans. His expression was warm but guarded. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to stay calm, offering a steady smile. "Sorry for dropping by unannounced," Jeff said gently as he approached. "I was hoping to talk more about those roses, but if you're busy..." "No, it's fine," I answered quickly, my voice betraying the slightest hint of eagerness. Mark smiled, completely unaware of the unspoken tension between Jeff and me. "I'll leave you gardening experts to it," he chuckled before heading back inside. Jeff and I stood in silence, the air between us heavy with unspoken words. Birds chirped cheerfully, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath our calm exteriors. Finally, Jeff cleared his throat, breaking the standoff. "Melanie, I wanted to apologize again for the other night," he said quietly, his voice laced with sincerity. "I crossed a line and I felt terrible about it ever since." I studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all I saw was genuine remorse. My chest tightened with a confusing mix of relief and disappointment. "You don't have to apologize," I said softly. "Nothing happened." He nodded slowly, then took a small step closer. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. But something did happen. We both felt it. My breath caught as his eyes locked onto mine. His words were careful, deliberate. "I know it's wrong, Melanie. I've tried to push it aside, but I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted quietly. "I haven't felt this kind of connection in years." A warmth flooded through me before it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Jeff, I'm married. Happily married." "I know," he said gently. "And the last thing I want is to disrupt your life. But I needed you to know you've awakened something in me. Something I thought was lost." For a brief moment, silence filled the space between us, heavy and unshakable. The only sound breaking the quiet was the rustling of leaves above. My heart pounded in my chest, torn between my loyalty to Mark and the undeniable pull of Jeff's honesty. I looked away, emotions warring inside me. "I appreciate your honesty," I finally whispered. "And I won't lie, your words really got to me. But we can't act on this. It wouldn't be fair to anyone." Jeff exhaled slowly, clearly struggling with his own inner turmoil. He reached out hesitantly, taking my hand in his. His touch was warm, grounding, and without thinking, my fingers tightened around his. "I respect your decision," he said softly. "All I want is your friendship. If that's all we can have, it's enough." I nodded slowly, though the intensity in his eyes told a different story. "Friendship," I repeated quietly, releasing his hand. "Nothing more." The weeks that followed were filled with an unsettling calm. Jeff and I kept in touch, exchanging messages about gardening or the weather, harmless topics that maintained the boundaries we had set. Yet, with each conversation, however brief, our emotional connection deepened. I found myself anticipating his messages, a feeling that both thrilled and terrified me. One evening, Mark casually mentioned that Jeff and Allison would be attending a company-sponsored gala downtown. My heart skipped a beat at the thought of seeing Jeff again, especially in a crowded room where our unspoken tension might be harder to hide. When the night arrived, the grand ballroom buzzed with soft music, glittering lights, and elegantly dressed guests mingling effortlessly. Mark guided me inside, his hand resting gently on my lower back, a familiar comfort, unaware of the storm brewing within me. Then, across the room, I saw him. Jeff. Our eyes met instantly, and in that brief moment, something inside me ignited. Dinner passed with light-hearted conversation between the four of us, each word carefully chosen, each laugh practiced. Yet beneath the surface, Jeff and I exchanged fleeting glances, each one charged with meaning, each subtle smile saying more than words ever could. After dinner, guests began drifting toward the dance floor. Ever the gentleman, Mark extended his hand to Allison for a friendly dance. She accepted with a polite laugh, and they joined the other couples beneath the glowing lights. And just like that, Jeff and I were left alone. We hesitated for just a moment before Jeff gently extended his hand. His voice was low and inviting. "May I?" A rush of nerves flooded through me, but I slowly placed my hand in his, letting him guide me onto the dance floor. My heart pounded as we swayed gently, the world around us fading until it felt like only Jeff and me existed in that moment. "You look beautiful tonight," he whispered, his voice warm and sincere. A flush crept up my cheeks, and my throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "Jeff?" I started softly, aware of the dangerous territory we were approaching. "We agreed to remain friends." He pulled back slightly, his eyes locking onto mine with tenderness and determination. "Friendship doesn't stop me from seeing how incredible you are. And it doesn't stop me from caring." We continued moving together, the closeness both comforting and agonizing. My mind urged caution, yet every instinct pulled me toward this man who saw the parts of me I kept hidden. Before I realized it, the song had ended. We stood still, gazing at each other, silently acknowledging the fragile boundary we had just crossed. "I shouldn't feel this way," I whispered shakily, "but somehow I can't stop myself." Jeff reached up, his fingertips grazing my cheek, sending a shiver down my spine. "Neither can I," he admitted. "But I will respect whatever you decide. I promise." I stepped away, my heart heavy with longing and uncertainty. I was grateful for his restraint, yet haunted by the emotions swirling between us. Rejoining Mark, I forced a polite smile, masking the storm inside me. But deep down, I wondered how much longer I could deny the truth that was blooming within me. Little did I know that night was just the beginning. The events that followed would test our fragile connection in ways I never expected, a revelation so shocking it would forever alter the course of our lives. Days turned into weeks, each one layering quiet longing and confusion onto my heart. I tried desperately to suppress my feelings, burying them beneath gardening projects, morning walks, and routine dinners with Mark. Yet Jeff's words echoed inside me, stirring emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel in decades. Then, on a rainy afternoon, as I sat in our cozy sitting room sorting through old photographs, my phone chimed. The familiar sound sent a jolt through me, and I instinctively knew who it was before even looking. Jeff's message was brief, yet it sent my pulse racing. "Melanie, can we talk?" "I promise it's important." I inhaled sharply, anxiety mixing with anticipation. After a brief hesitation, I typed my reply. "Of course." "Where?" He suggested a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, a neutral place where we could talk privately, yet publicly enough to maintain the respect our marriages deserved. My heart pounded as I agreed, uncertainty clawing at me. My conscience wavered, but my need to understand his urgency overpowered my doubts. Cafe was warm and inviting, filled with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee and the low murmur of conversations. I spotted Jeff at a secluded table in the corner, his hands clasped tightly, his eyes filled with an intensity one had never seen before. As I approached, he looked up, his expression serious yet hesitant. "Thanks for meeting me," he said quietly, gesturing for me to sit. His usual ease was absent. Instead, he looked tense, deeply conflicted. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. "Jeff, what is it? Has something happened?" He exhaled heavily, running a hand through his silver hair. His eyes met mine, filled with quiet turmoil. And in that moment, I knew whatever he was about to say would change everything. Anguish washed over Allison as she spoke, her voice unsteady. "No," my stomach dropped, my heart pounding with panic. Jeff nodded slowly, his expression serious. "She sensed something at the gala. Yesterday, she confronted me. I couldn't lie, Melanie. I told her everything, how I feel. The conversations we've had, even though nothing has actually happened." Cold wave of fear gripped my chest. Panic rose inside me. "Jeff, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he reassured me gently, his eyes full of emotion. "But Allison and I agreed on something important. I needed to be honest with you, to talk openly about what comes next." "What comes next?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. The thought of disrupting the life I had carefully built filled me with dread. Jeff reached for my hand, his fingers steadying my trembling ones. His touch was warm, yet it only deepened my inner turmoil. "I told Allison that I would respect whatever choice you make. If you decide to walk away, I promise I'll accept it. But if you feel even half of what I do, then we need to face this honestly." His words carried so much weight, so much sincerity. My throat tightened and tears stung my eyes as I struggled to respond. "Jeff, you've awakened feelings in me that I thought were long buried." "But Mark, he's been my life for over 30 years. Jeff squeezed my hand gently, his gaze filled with compassion. "I know, and I would never ask you to betray that. But can you truly deny the connection we have? Isn't it worth at least acknowledging?" My heart ached, torn between loyalty and longing. Deep down, I knew he was right. What we had wasn't something that could simply be ignored. The bond we had built, quiet yet undeniable, deserved the truth. Not just for us, but for our spouses as well. Through a long pause, I finally found my voice. It was shaky but honest. "I can't deny what I feel. You've reminded me of parts of myself I had almost forgotten. But the thought of hurting Mark terrifies me. I don't want to lose him. I don't want to hurt Allison either." Jeff nodded, understanding reflected in his face. "I feel the same. But I also believe that hiding the truth will hurt even more in the end. Maybe by being honest, we can all figure out what comes next together." We sat in silence, absorbing the weight of his words. Sighed, the rain gently tapped against the cafe windows, mirroring our quiet reflection. "I need to talk to Mark," I finally whispered, feeling both relieved and terrified by the admission. "He deserves honesty." Jeff gave my hand a reassuring squeeze before letting go. "Whatever happens, Melanie, I'm here. As a friend, or maybe more, but only if that's what you want. No pressure. Just know you're not alone in this. We parted with unspoken understanding, our emotions tangled yet unmistakably clear. As I drove home through the gray drizzle, I rehearsed the conversation I had been dreading but knew was necessary. Mark deserved the truth, even if it hurt. That evening, after dinner, we sat quietly in the living room. My heart pounded fiercely, anxiety rising inside me. I took a deep breath and gathered my courage. "Mark, I need to talk to you," I began, my voice betraying my nerves. He slowly lowered his newspaper, looking at me with mild concern. "Is everything all right, Melanie?" I met his familiar, comforting gaze, my heart aching. Something happened recently, something unexpected. Nothing physical, but emotionally, I felt drawn to someone else. His expression shifted from confusion to quiet hurt. His voice, though gentle, carried a strain. "Jeff," he asked, surprising me with his intuition. I nodded slowly, guilt tightening my chest. "Yes." Mark exhaled deeply, his eyes distant but composed. "I noticed something at the gala, the way he looked at you, and the way you looked at him." Tears welled in my eyes. "I never meant for this to happen," I pleaded softly. "You've been my whole life, Mark. I love you, but this feeling, it's awakened something inside me. Something powerful. I had to be honest." He studied me thoughtfully, sadness flickering in his eyes. Through a moment, he reached for my hand, his touch gentle and unexpected. "I appreciate your honesty, Melanie. You could have hidden this from me, but you didn't. That matters." His response shook me to my core, deepening my guilt. "Mark, I'm so sorry." He shook his head. His voice was quiet but firm. "Don't apologize for being human. 30 years is a long time. Love changes. People grow and shift, yes, but I understand. You deserve honesty too." My heart broke under the weight of his kindness and understanding. "I don't know what to do now. I feel lost." Mark sighed deeply, squeezing my hand. "Take some time. Figure out what your heart truly wants. No matter what, I want you to be happy." His compassion overwhelmed me, flooding me with both gratitude and sadness. In that moment, I realized the true strength of our bond wasn't just in our history, it was in Mark's unwavering respect for me as a person. We sat there in quiet contemplation, the soft ticking of the clock reminding us how fragile and fleeting life is. Whatever choice lay ahead, I knew Mark's generosity had changed everything, opening doors I never imagined possible. As the evening faded into the hush of night, I knew the hardest decisions were still ahead. The road was uncertain, but honesty had brought clarity, a path towards self-discovery and growth. Yet nothing could have prepared me for what came next, a final revelation that would forever alter the course of all our lives. Each day felt delicate, like we were caught between the comfort of our past and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Mark and I found ourselves talking more openly than we had in years, sharing our fears, hopes, and dreams. Strangely, this honesty brought us closer, deepening our connection despite the unknown future we faced. Meanwhile, Jeff and Allison were taking their own steps toward understanding, choosing counseling to work through their complicated emotions. Jeff and I mutually agreed to keep our distance during this fragile time, allowing ourselves the space to reflect without any pressure or expectations. One sunny afternoon, I was in my garden, the one place that always gave me a sense of clarity. As I tended to the plants, Mark quietly approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. He sat beside me and handed me a warm mug. "Melanie," he said carefully, his voice steady yet gentle. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." I studied his face, seeing both strength and vulnerability in his expression. "Me too," I replied. Mark gave me a soft smile, his familiar warmth settling my nerves. "I've realized something important. Our marriage has always been built on love, but also on friendship, respect, and honesty. Maybe after all these years, we need to give each other the space to truly explore what happiness means for us, even if it means embracing change." Tears welled in my eyes at his openness. "What are you saying, Mark?" He reached for my hand, holding it tenderly, sincerity clear in his gaze. I'm saying I love you enough to let you figure out what your heart truly desires, even if that means exploring your connection with Jeff. Whatever happens, you deserve happiness. We both do. Now, as I sit in my garden, surrounded by vibrant flowers swaying gently in the warm breeze, I understand the truth behind our journey. Life, much like my garden, requires patience, courage, and a willingness to embrace change. Relationships aren't just about routine or obligation. They are built on authenticity, compassion, and respect. And sometimes what seems impossible at first leads us exactly where we are meant to be. I glance toward the house, where Mark is chatting comfortably with Jeff and Allison, their laughter drifting softly through the air. In this moment, I know we are all finding our way.